Good morning. Welcome everyone along to this St Andrew's Day meeting of the Finance and Resources Committee. I just repeat the comments made by Audrey. And one thing I would point out is something I'm guilty of, is when you finish speaking, if you can depress your mic, because it blocks out others that follow on. So we have at the top table here Stuart McKenzie, Head of Finance. Scott Walker, our Chief Accountant, is online. Councillor Grant Laying as Council Leader. Danny Williams as Clerk. Kirsten's not here this week. And Lisa Simpson. So can I ask Danny, first of all, do we have any apologies? And there are 3 substitutions.
Yes, thank you, convener. We've got a couple of substitutions. We've got Councillor Leishman is subbing for Bailey Bailey, and Councillor Anderson is subbing for Bailey Ahern. They're the only registered substitutes I've got.
Councillor Waters is sorry for Andrew Barrett. That's indicated.
Yeah. Thank you, convener. And we've got Councillor Waters substituting for Councillor Parrott.
And I'd also point out that the provost indicated to me he is online. So can we take a call of those present, both here and online? I think you can see who's here, and the bulk of the committee is here.
Yeah, so what I'll do, conveners, I'll just run through who's actually in the chambers just for the purpose of the recording, just to say faffing about with a microphone. So so we've got Councillor Anderson's in the chambers, as is Councillor Leishman. Councillor Barrett is joining us in the chambers, so Councillor Peter Barrett. Councillor Chan, can you confirm if you're online, please?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert's with us in the chambers. As yourself, convener, and Councillor Drysdale, Councillor Duff, Councillor Forbes, Councillor Lang, always in the all with us in the chambers. Provost, can you confirm that you're online, please?
Good morning. Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Provost. Okay. And then Councillors McEwen, Rebeck, Shires, Stewart, and Waters are all with us in the chamber, so that's everyone present who should be. Thanks, convener. Councillor Lang, did I miss you off there? Apologies.
So is that everyone accounted for now at last?
That is everyone.
Last but not least. Right. Okay, can we now move on to declarations of interest? Are there any interests to declare? I would just declare myself a non-financial interest with Culture Perth and Kinross. I think just for the record.
Can I just a non-financial interest as a director of the Countryside Trust? I know it comes up in a few places.
Councillor Forbes.
Maybe just take advice. There is reference to Tayside Contracts, and I'm on the board of Tayside Contracts. I'm not sure if that's a declarable interest or not. Looking to Lisa for some guidance here.
I think it's best just to put in, because it is going to be a
in terms of the papers that are before you, the fact that you're members of these boards and committees, etc., is not a declarable interest at this point. If there was any point in the debate or the discussion where it looked like an amendment or motion was coming your way that was pertinent to the board that you sat on or the organisation that sat on, at that point declare an interest, and at that point you would leave. But in terms of the general update and monitoring reports, there's no need to declare an interest.
Okay, then thank you, Lisa. Right, we move on to item 3 on the agenda, and that's the minutes of the meeting of this committee on 7th of September. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? Can we agree the minutes then? Which is the outstanding business statement, and as you can see, there are 3 items there. Does anyone want to raise any matters with regard to this outstanding business statement?
No, it was just to note that all actions have been completed.
Okay, with all actions indeed having been completed, we note the statement. We now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which I think will take a little bit more time, and that is the revenue budget report. It's the second quarterly update for the current year, financial year. Could I ask Scott Walker, who's online, to speak to the report?
Thank you, convener, and good morning. Apologies, convener. I think that the committee's agreement was sought to remove the items from the outstanding business statement. Dan, should we've done that?
I asked if the outstanding business statement can be noted. Yep. And the 3 actions on the statement have been completed. Yep. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, convener, it was just that our agreement was sought that they be removed from the list. I wasn't entirely sure that we'd done that.
All the items on the outstanding business statement, as you can see, have been completed, and what we're asking is for just to note that fact. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really not trying to be pedantic here. It says on the report the committee's agreement will be sought to its removal from the OBS. So I think we just need to say agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We now move on to item 5, the revenue budget update. Could I ask Scott Walker to speak to the report? Scott?
Thank you, convener, and good morning, councillors. This is the second revenue monitoring report for 22-23 and is based on the September ledger. Across the council, we're currently projecting an overspend of just under £1.3 million. This is an improvement of around £700,000 from the last update to you in September, and I'll take you through the main movements shortly. The projections included in the update are based on 6 months of actual data and will be further refined as the financial year progresses. As has been the case in previous financial years, the committee will receive further updates as the year progresses. In section 4 of the report, we provide an update on service revenue budgets. The position for all council services has improved since the last update in September. The projected underspend in education and children's services has increased by £633,000, and there are 3 main factors behind this. Firstly, proactive workforce management measures continue to be undertaken across the service. Secondly, a net reduction in the projected overspend on children, young people and families. and thirdly, due to additional income from school meals. Within the devolved school management scheme, there is a projected underspend of £777,000, which represents 0.7% of the overall DSM budget. And at this time, we're projecting a £300,000 underspend on the Pupil Equity Fund. Across the community service, we are currently projecting a net underspend of £290,000, which is an improvement of £538,000. Again, the report sets out the continued proactive workforce management measures being undertaken across the service. However, this is partially offset by additional pressures due to severe weather and public transport. Finally, across corporate and democratic services, we're projecting a net overspend of £932,000, which is an improvement of £408,000. Proactive workforce management measures and updated energy projections are the main reasons behind this movement. Turning now to section 5, which provides an update on our corporate budgets. At paragraphs 5.1 and 5.2, and included in Appendix 3, we provide a summary of the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership position that the Integration Joint Board will consider in more detail later in December. From paragraph 5.3, we provide an update on council tax collection performance. To the end of October, we had collected 64% compared with 64.03% last year. This collection performance is encouraging and is being kept under review. At paragraph 5.11, the report sets out the potential financial challenges facing Tayside contracts. At this time, we are identifying a potential risk to the council, and council officers continue to engage with colleagues from Tayside contracts on the options available to reduce this pressure. At paragraph 5.15, the report provides an update on national pay negotiations and seeks approval to apply £900,000 from reserves to contribute to the estimated additional cost of the pay awards in the current financial year. And finally, within this section, from paragraph 5.23, we're seeking approval to implement a policy on empty property rates relief. The legislation on empty property rates relief changes on the 1st of April 2023, with powers devolved from the Scottish Government to councils. If the council does not have a policy in place, then it would be required to charge full non-domestic rates on all unoccupied premises. By adopting this policy, existing reliefs will stay in place whilst officers develop options before bringing a report back to a future meeting of this committee. Section 6 includes an update on the housing revenue account, as well as an update on the latest financial projection for Live Active Leisure. Section 7 includes information on additional revenue support grant and ring fence grant. Section 7 and Appendix 5 also include details of £1.7 million of other funding that the council will receive in the current financial year. 8 sets out several adjustments between budget headings that result in no change in the level of council spend. And finally, Section 9 sets out several proposals relating to our reserves. Most of the proposals relate to contributions to or from reserves for projects or initiatives that have already been approved by this committee or the council. However, there are 2 specific proposals that I would like to draw to the committee's attention. Firstly, there is a proposal at paragraph 9.9 that the committee reconfirms that the projects listed in Appendix 6 remain a priority for the council and that we carry forward the resources to ensure delivery. Many of the projects were approved in February 22 when we set the budget, but have been delayed for several reasons, including reduced capacity. Secondly, at paragraph 9.20, we're seeking approval to earmark £180,000 to support the UCI Cycling World Championships that will take place in Perth and Kinross in August 23. This will be funded by a combination of in-year underspends from within the community service and by redesignating existing earmarked reserves. Convener, colleagues and I are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Indeed, are there any questions? Right, could I ask, first of all, Councillor Rebick, followed by Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Convener.
It was a question on underspends in devolved school management, pupil equity fund and other such ECS underspends. Am I right in thinking that a lot of these underspends are to do with good planning and spreading the costs over different financial years rather than actual underspends? Thanks.
Yeah, Mayor. Could I ask Sheila Devlin to come in?
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Rebick, I can confirm that in relation to devolved school management, we would refer within Education and Children's Services to those as planned carry forwards rather than an underspend. So it's exactly as you've outlined, that people will be looking across a longer period of time and looking to balance their budget in that way. In relation to PEF, we do encourage spend within the academic year that PEF is provided for, although we actually are allocated that money on a financial year, because the money that's allocated for PEF, of course, is allocated based on the children who are in schools in a particular academic year. So we do try and encourage spend of PEF in relation to that. But if colleagues are hoping to spend PEF money, for example, on staff, and there's a delay in making an appointment, then there will be some slippage in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take Councillor Leishman, as I'd mentioned, next, then followed by Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. My question is relating to council tax. This week I read the Aberlour Children's Charity Report, and it's unjust that families who are trying to live on an adequate income are forced into paying off unsustainable debt. Many low-income families are in debt to public bodies. These include incomes being reduced by the DWP to pay off debts, including universal credit advance payments, as well as third-party deductions on behalf of local authorities and other public bodies for rent arrears, service charges and council tax payments. As low income is a problem for approximately 24,000 people in Perth and Kinross, what measures can we take as a council to help with council tax payments to alleviate the stress and worry of our residents? Thank you.
Okay. Could I ask Scott Walker?
Convener, I believe Kevin Fraser or Lynn Brady are on the call, who are much closer to the local taxes scene than I am.
Could I ask Kevin Fraser then to come in?
Good morning all. Good morning, Convener. Thank you for the question, Councillor Leishman. We are aware of that, and one of the issues is a lot of the deductions are for water service charges, which we cannot control as well as we can control council tax. But we do continue to try and maximise uptake of council tax reduction. We continue to try and maximise uptake of all available reductions, exemptions, discounts, etc. And we continue to have excellent relationships with our welfare rights team to try and maximise income to help everybody that we possibly can. But again, happy to take any further questions or to give any further indication of what we can do. But we are aware of the issue and we are doing our best to support all the council taxpayers that we have.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Next is a question from Councillor Drysdale and then followed by Councillor Shears.
Thank you, Convener. I wanted to turn to the section on the Cost of Living Community Fund. Firstly, I would just ask for clarification of what is intended to be said at point 9.17, which seems jumbled up and isn't at all clear. Can you just confirm, can it just be confirmed that the 470,000 resources already approved and allocated by this council to tackle the cost of living and energy crisis that we are currently facing has been fully allocated, and if committee approves the additional £100,000 that is proposed today, how quickly will these funds be made available, and will it be through the same route as previously? Thank you.
Scott?
I could maybe start the answer, convener. So of the 470,000, 120,000 and 200,000 pounds have been fully allocated towards the warm packs and the warm spaces, and that's what we're seeking to do, is to top that up by 100,000 pounds because of the demand that has come in from communities for this funding. I don't know if there's colleagues from communities also on the call that might be able to add more to that.
Claire Miller?
Yeah, I think not to add an awful lot more to what Scott has just described. I mean, the response to the initial funding was extremely positive, and very quickly community groups stepped forward, and we have got cosy spaces stepped up almost with immediate effect. The funding, as Scott has described, has now run out. We had a number of bids in, so with immediate effect, I think just to give that reassurance, with immediate effect, if it is approved today and supported today at council, those additional funds will be made immediately available. And apologies, I do see that there is a little bit of a jumbled up in terms of the wording within the report, so apologies for any confusion there.
Anything further? I move to Councillor Shearers.
Thank you, convener. It was just a question, it's a bit of clarification as well. 4.9 in the report, it refers to catering services. There's an increase in the projected level of income of £158,000, but then at 5.11 in the section on Tayside contracts, it talks about the pressure on Tayside contracts, and it includes within that pressure different school meal uptake, therefore indicating that there's not an increase in school meal uptake. And obviously this is an issue that's of concern to all of us, so just to get some clarification around that.
Officers? Greg Bolland?
Thanks, convener. Councillor Shires, I think what we're actually seeing now, we're actually seeing an improvement within the uptake of school meals. Obviously, early part of the financial year numbers were low, so obviously the projections for Tayside contracts over the year will be obviously a lot lower than anticipated. What we're seeing now, and I think just the discrepancy within the wording, or not just to explain the difference in the wording, is that meal numbers are now starting to increase across both the primary and the secondary schools. So across education and children's services specifically, we are seeing now improved income levels due to now the numbers increasing, but early part of the year the numbers were less. So I think that's just, it hopefully explains why those kind of two bits of narrative don't necessarily square up.
Does that suffice?
If I may, I'm not sure it's necessary. I think we're maybe getting given different variations, because that's certainly not my understanding of what was reported at Tayside contracts recently, but I can maybe seek further clarification from officers on it. Thank you.
Next is Councillor Barrett, followed by Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, convener. Page 39 of the report, Appendix 3, refers to a £1 million underspend in older people's services, and paragraph 5.1 refers to that further, talking about a slippage in planned investment in older people's services. £1 million seems a substantial underspend in older people's services. What's the impact on older people's well-being as a result of that underinvestment? And is there a danger, because we hear alarming stories of the Scottish Government wanting to claw back from IGP reserves, is there a danger of this money being clawed back by the Scottish Government if it's not spent in year?
Thank you. Cover response. All right. Thomas Klein.
Thank you, convener. In terms of the detail of the £1 million question, I'll happily pick that up with Jackie Pepper, the Chief Officer of the HSCP, and I'll ask for a briefing note to be provided on that point. In terms of the matter of clawback, Councillor Barrett, I'm sure will be aware that was a point that was raised at COSLA on Friday, and COSLA is still awaiting feedback from the Scottish Government in terms of the mechanism for clawback and the legal position in terms of those monies being returned to government. So as yet we haven't had that confirmed.
I'd be very grateful for the briefing. Thank you.
We move next to Councillor Forbes, followed by Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Convener. If I may return to the warm spaces pack, I'm interested in how many people we're actually helping on the ground. So I know there's demand, so I'm assuming that demand is coming from the organisers. And I also see that it tells us we'll be doing some, I think, a simple monitoring return. Will that tell us how many people we've actually helped, both in the warm spaces and the warm packs? And if it won't, could we get that information?
I'm going to ask Councillor Lane.
Yes, and through the anti-poverty task force, the members there will be able to tell you that that's important just now. There's demand coming in all the time. We're trying to fill the demand as it's coming in, but moving forward, we have to be mapping done of where the warm spaces, etc., are, so that we're not overlapping, and we will have numbers of people attending in each area, because we want to provide a local authority wide service. And it's at the moment it's charitable organisations that are coming forward willing to work and take these projects forward. This is the immediacy of why we're doing this money now, but I agree with you totally. We have to check the efficacy of the whole project moving forward and make sure we're not got duplication. So yes, the forum will be how many people are attending, how often, because there's no point in having a warm space there opening on a Tuesday and Thursday and another one there opening on a Tuesday and Thursday, where you could have one Monday, Wednesday and somebody else Tuesday, Thursday. So immediacy now is to get out there where organisations are saying there's demand, but certainly we'll be following it through and come back with trying to make it a more mapped and equitable service.
Thank you. Claire Mellor also, I believe, wants to provide a response.
No, I don't really have anything more to add to Councillor Lane's overview there, other than absolutely yes, we will be, obviously the money has just gone out relatively recently, we will be monitoring usage and indeed impact, and the mapping activity that Councillor Lane described will be undertaken so that we can clearly identify where there are areas of, well, where there might be some gaps in provision, but also where there are areas of duplication. Communities are working together very, very well, so we had an example at the Anti-Poverty Task Force last week, whereby community groups in Latham are ensuring that their provision is available almost every day of the week, so they're coordinating with each other. So some really positive approaches out there within communities in terms of their response and their coordination of support to communities. So really positive there.
Okay, next question is from Councillor Stewart, followed by Councillor Coughlin.
Thank you, Convener. It would be two questions, but happy to come back afterwards. As the first one is on section 9.3, the approval being sought to draw down £77,000 to create capacity to take forward a number of studies from the Project Feasibility Fund. I just wondered if we could know what those feasibility studies are.
Officers, Scott.
Colleagues will be able to help me out with it. Some of it is around about, I think, Pooler House, looking at the options around that. And I need to check what the other balance is around. But I can come back to you, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you.
We'll take your second question later, I think, to be fair. Barbara?
Good morning, councillors. The specific request is for project feasibility funding that I can speak about is in relation to the development of the Perth Eco Innovation Park business case. Elected members will remember that within the council's approved budget set earlier this year, then there was funding put forward in terms of prudential borrowing for that. But what we're looking for is continued support to look at, sort of work with a consultant to provide an outline business case for that in relation to the Green Book standards to develop and to support the overall approach that we're having with that, and to work with Edinburgh University in terms of the moving forward on Perth West.
Thank you. Right, next question is, and I'll come back to yourself, Councillor Stewart, is Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, my question is probably a daft laddie question. It's under section 5.6 and it relates to council tax. The first thing is, I note that the chart appears to drop in terms of the number of properties in Band D equivalent properties. So I'm just wondering how that's possible, because presumably once you build a house and it's taxable, it remains taxable. The other part of that question is, how much income or how much revenue is generated by these increases? I'd be interested to know just the scale of things. Thank you.
I think I'll come to Scott, but maybe Kevin on this.
Thanks, Kevin. I could start the answer. So the reason that Councillor Cuthbert that the chart varies, goes ups and down, is because exemptions and discounts can be awarded. So that impacts on the total number of Band D equivalent properties that we have available to contribute towards our council tax. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. I just would have thought that the chart would go up and you show an increasing exemption level, if you like, rather than showing it as a sort of net figure. That's all. I'm also interested in how much this relates to, how much revenue.
Sorry, so I'm not sure I understand it. What we're showing here is the number of properties. When we set the budget each year, we use the number of council tax Band D base to do that. So what we're doing here is trying to show you that there's still growth out there which will support the delivery of the council tax income budget. But I mean, happy to take a discussion offline with you to try and understand that more, if that would be useful.
That'd be fine, thank you.
Thanks, and I think obviously that will become a bit clearer as part of the budget review process, which we're about to commence really as of next week. Can I next take Councillor Duff, followed by, I think it's Provost McDade.
Thank you, Convener. My question is in relation to Tayside contracts, which starts at section 5.11. And it's certainly been interested in hearing more detail about the recent court judgment on a national issue which is affecting their income. But my main question is in section 514 about the risk of the budgeted amount of the trading operation surplus of £550,000 not being received in this current year, and whether or not that has been factored into the budget deficit for the council as it currently stands. Thank you.
I think we'll take this first on the actual judgment, the Brazil judgment, and I'm going to defer here to Head of Legal, Lisa Simpson, who I think might have a better view on this. And then the broader question we'll come to late in a minute.
I think that we're still kind of working through the implications of the Brazil judgment in terms of term time working and what the impact that will be in terms of holiday pay, leave, etc. So, but it is quite clear that there will be an impact. We're just working through to the detail, but that's being flagged as an issue and a pressure and a risk.
Okay, and as to the broader question in relation from Councillor Duff on Tayside contracts, could I have a response from, I think, probably...
Sorry, Convener, I could come in there. Convener, I could come in there. So Councillor Duff, we have factored that into our position. On Appendix 1, you will see we're reporting a variance of the £550,000. So that's contributing towards our overall projected overspend of just under £1.3 million. So we have made that assumption for now, for financial planning purposes.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Provost McDade, who is, of course, online.
Thank you, Convener. My question is around 9.23, which is the action where we're being asked to approve the transfer of 140,000 from communities and 40,000 from the international events to an earmarked reserve for the UCI World Cycling Championships. I am hoping that we will receive further information in due course, but I want to get clarity on this is not the council giving final approval for that to go ahead. I assume that the decision as to whether the council will support that and the road closures, etc., associated with it will have to go to the Environment, Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee. Can I just get confirmation of that?
I can confirm that that will be the case. That would be what we would have done with the ETAP Caledonia right at the very start. Clearly, sort of what we're looking for here is, sort of a commitment in principle to funding this while we continue to work with the organiser and they continue to work with the communities who would be impacted, and we would bring more information back at the next EI and ED committee.
Supplementary, if I may, Convener.
Yes.
Thank you.
I notice, however, there is an answer from Mark Butterworth, but I'll let you. Barbara has dealt, right. Continue with your supplementary.
Yeah, thank you. Just very briefly, just in terms of the timeline for that, I'm wondering if Director Renton could provide us with when that is likely to come to the committee and when those conversations are going to happen with affected communities.
Barbara.
We would clearly want to bring that as soon as possible, but I know that Mark has got, he will have a bit more of the operational detail on that, so happy to pass to Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Convener. Yeah, we've been in discussion with the organisers for some time now, but it's more about broad principles. The organisers and ourselves are very keen to progress this and to get clarification around the route, etc., moving forward. So we're keen to bring things and get that approval, hopefully at the next E&I committee. But there will be extensive, and I need to emphasise this, extensive discussion with the community and businesses, because although there is significant benefits, economic benefits with the event, there will be quite a bit of disruption on the day. So we need to have those conversations to make sure everybody is absolutely clear about the positives and also the potential impact. But we will do that as soon as we can. In fact, we will continue discussions later today with the organisers following the meeting.
Thank you. Right, next question is online, is from Councillor Chan, and then I intend to make the final question. I don't think there's any others I can see in the list here. The second question from Councillor Stewart. So, Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Convener. My question is on Tayside contracts 5.11. I was just wondering what the court national issue was. Is there? What is it next?
So I didn't quite.
What's the
Can you
court
repeat the
case?
question, please? Sorry.
Sorry. I was just wondering in 5.11 Tayside contracts what the national issue was.
I believe that was discussed earlier. It's about the Brazil judgment. It's a court judgment, and it revolves around payment for part-time workers and holiday pay, etc. So there was a judgment in the UK courts that brought that forward, and if that holds, that decision holds, it may affect Tayside contracts over payments that they will have to make to some of their staff. Thanks.
And I think also, it almost certainly, it looks to me, will hold because it's a ruling by the Supreme Court. Can we move on next to, I'm not sure, Councillor Forbes, do you have a further question yourself? Right, I'll come to Councillor Stewart and then to yourself, and that will be the final question. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. I was just wondering if I could ask about the proposal regarding the council approved expenditure, which I think is in 9.9 to 9.12 and listed out for us in Appendix 6. Given that this was council approved expenditure and a lot of these priorities, certainly at least one of them I was involved in having added in, and a lot of the other ones as well, I know came directly from elected members as our priorities, our strategic priorities. Why the slippage has occurred and why the resource wasn't allocated within the services to actually deliver on elected member priorities?
Scott, a more general point, and I think it's in part a question of staffing resources and capacity, but Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I can maybe start my answer. It's absolutely capacity. Officers have been involved in a number of issues since the budget was set, but there's also been community engagement across a number of the projects, which has added a little bit of time towards taking the projects forward. So all we're seeking here to do is to basically put the money into reserves so it's still available for next year. As officers, we don't have authority to move money between years, and we're just looking for the committee to reconfirm that that is what it still wants to do.
Barbara, or I noticed Mark Butterworth has put in a response. Thomas Glenn. Thomas.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I think it's important to stress that the points that have been raised by both Scott and by the Convener are absolutely correct. We have challenges. Those challenges are set out within this report in terms of slippage that we have across all services that we are managing, vacancies that we are continuing to look to pursue where we can, but officers are continuing to deliver on a number of different fronts. So it's not about any lack of effort or any lack of commitment to the priorities that Council has set. I think there are two separate points here for me in terms of where we are financially as an organisation. The various leadership groups across the council have been informed of what we anticipate the financial challenges will be for us moving forward. So if there is any suggestion from council that any of these items are no longer items that they wish to pursue, then that would be helpful. It will certainly help us in terms of the financial position. But as Scott has set out, if we are still intent on delivering all of these, it would require a decision of this committee to put the monies into reserves. But we can't confirm when those projects would be complete.
Thank you. Do we have a follow-up on that? I would just point out in the report we do state, should any of the projects no longer be a priority, the projected underspend would be available to support the financial management of the council in both current and future financial years. But the list of projects is set out there in Appendix 6. Final question is Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Convener. It's on the devolution of empty property rates relief. I'm pleased to see some devolution coming down the way from the Scottish Government. Convener, I'm concerned that this could be the opening for the Scottish Government to tell us that we might have to fund this in the future. Do you share my concern?
I think I would rather, because it is quite a technical area, I would rather that council officers were to respond. What is being proposed for the next financial year is in many ways a status quo, and then we can look at the options. And I think it is devolution. I think it gives us enhanced powers. But Fraser.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. The honest answer is we're not sure. The Scottish Government have been quite clear and quite keen to point out that the arrangements that they're setting up as part of this autonomy is for a 3-year period only. They have given us no indication whatsoever as to what's to happen after that 3-year period. In terms of funding, the funding is based on the Scottish Fiscals Commission estimate of what the statutory schemes would cost for the next 3 years, and it's slightly more than the cost of the actual cost over the preceding years. So we think the funding is okay going forward on a national level. That will vary local authority to local authority depending on the trajectory of empty properties. But the main thing is we've been told that this is a 3-year scheme and we've no indication of what is going to happen beyond then. But as I say, if I do come into any information, I will certainly share it with all those concerned.
Kevin, thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Kevin, for that. Just so I'm clear, does that mean the funding is secure for 3 years? I didn't quite understand what you're saying there.
That is my understanding. The funding across the UK, sorry, the funding across Scotland is secured for 3 years at £105 million across Scotland to be divvied up between local authorities based on previous year's spend. So there is a commitment that it will be funded for the 3 years, but no commitment beyond that.
That's great. Let's keep an eye on that then. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be more than this, and the council will have to look at options. But I think the position at the moment is said, I think, fairly clearly in the report. Right, there are no further questions, so I'm now going to move the report. This, councillors, it's the second monitoring report for the current financial year, and it's based on activity to the end of September. Earlier in the meeting, Scott Walker, as Chief Accountant, provided elected members with an update on the contents of the report. The report, I think, provides us with a very detailed commentary, as usual, on the financial performance of our services, and I'm pleased to note that the financial position of all council services has improved since our last update. The report also includes commentary on several other issues that I think I'd like to say just a few words upon. Firstly, it gives an update, as we've heard already, on the challenging times facing some of our partners, and not least Tayside contracts, and I think there will be further to come on that, and also on Live Active Leisure. Secondly, it provides the committee with an update on the status of national pay negotiations for our staff and services. And on the subject of pay awards, I do welcome just over 7 million of financial support that's been received from the Scottish Government towards the additional costs in the financial year. Finally, we're asked to approve the implementation of, just as we've been talking, of a policy on empty property rates relief following its devolution from the Scottish Government to local councils. This policy ensures that the existing statutory reductions remain in place from 1st of April 2023 and allow us to understand the opportunities more fully for Perth and Kinross. I'm sure it's a matter we'll come back in due course to finance and resources. Finally, I just want to make 3 comments on our reserves. We discussed just a minute ago in Appendix 6, and there we set out our commitment to the projects listed there. Secondly, again, we've discussed, after listening to the needs of our communities, I'm pleased to say that we were able to apply a further £100,000 to the Cost of Living Fund to meet demand for more cosy spaces and warm packs. And finally, and thirdly, I welcome the proposal to earmark funding for the UCI Cycling World Championships that will take place across Perth and Kinross next summer. And looking at this on the Grand Fondo, as it's called, I think that's going to be in early August of next year. And this will bring the biggest cycling event in our history to our doorstep, and that will give a useful boost to the local economy. Whilst we're currently projecting an overspend of just under 1.3 million, That is based on the September ledger and will undoubtedly change. At the moment, our financial projections are heading in the right direction. And once again, I'd like to give my thanks to the Chief Executive and staff across the whole of the Council for their continued efforts. These are challenging times. We will have further updates during the course of this financial year. And at this point, I'd like to move the paper. Councillor Lake.
Thanks, Convener. I welcome the slightly improved position that overall we are facing since the last report on many of the services. Unfortunately, they are, through the hard work of our officers, trying to achieve savings that will help us moving forward next year. Not so comfortable about where they have to take them from slippage and that, because but that's one of the only options we've got. I think we're still all facing a very bleak outlook, and everybody who's seen the pack of proposals for next year's budget will be well aware of it, and everybody will become aware of it in the oncoming weeks. Hopefully this paper will pass, and I'd like to thank all groups for supporting our work in the cost of living crisis and anti-poverty. Everybody's worked well together on that, and the anti-poverty task force is a group of all political parties represented and working with communities and that to drive it forward. So it's unfortunate that the uptake has to be as big as it is, and demand is outstripping what funding we put in before. But I'm really pleased that we as a cross-council grouping could support this in the interim. Apart from that, the Grand Fondo cycling event, I think we'll monitor that going forward, but I think it is right to put some commitment in at the moment to that we will join in with our other local authority colleagues in trying to bring a big event to Perth. Even in these straitened times, we cannot have Perth just closed up and separate from everything that's going on around about it. We have to look outward as well as try and protect our residents and citizens as best we can. So I'd like to thank the officers for the paper, and I'd like to thank everybody in here for the questions, and I'm sure there's other questions that we may not have had time for that you've come upon in this paper, because it is a big important paper, and I would ask you, if you have any, to direct them to the relevant officers, and I'm sure they'll get back to you with anything you want to know. With that, I'd like to second this paper. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Right, before we move on to comment, we have an amendment from Councillor McEwen. Councillor McEwen, what is your amendment?
Thank you, Convener. My amendment goes to item 9.12 on the papers, and it's really just to change the very last sentence of that, where I think that the final underspends, rather than going to earmarked reserves, go into the general fund. We are in the middle of a budget process. I think this action preeminates our budget decisions for February by earmarking the monies to these projects. I think the projects in Appendix 6, there are projects in there that I would love to see and want to see go ahead, but my view is that the budget process should take cognizance of that. You know, Scott Walker started his presentation with telling us that even in this current financial year, we're over £1 million in debt and behind. And then we have this action here, which is actually going to earmark just over £1 million to projects that haven't been able to be progressed. So my view is that we should use the budget process to take these projects forward rather than preeminate the budget process and earmark the monies in advance.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Do you have a seconder?
Convener, I'm happy to formally second his Councillor McEwen's amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Okay, on the amendment, we move to.
Sorry,
think it would be helpful to have that. Councillor Barrett? Fair dues. Yeah, Councillor Duff.
Thank you. Now, just to clarify that any decision taken on whether we move these into earmarked or non-earmarked reserve studies can be overturned, if you like, through a budget process anyway. You know, whatever decision we take today, it doesn't affect what we do come the budget time.
I read out 9.11, and should any of the projects no longer be a priority, the projected underspend would be available to support the financial management of the council in both current and future financial years. And I think that makes the position reasonably clear, and we would have some leeway during the budget process. And there are several projects where there is quite a large underspend. Can I go to Councillor Barrett? Okay, Stuart Mackenzie.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Duff, for your point of clarification. Your understanding is correct.
Councillor Barrett.
Asked and answered.
We will have a brief recess. Okay. We'll make it for at most probably 5 to 10 minutes, no more than 10. Okay, we reconvene. Councillor McEwen, I think you want to make a comment about your amendment.
Thank you, Convener. After consultation and more depth with the senior officers, I'm going to withdraw my amendment.
Councillor Waters.
I'm happy with that, thank you.
The amendment is withdrawn. We now proceed, having moved and seconded the paper, to any comments. I'm not seeing at the moment any comments on my screen. Danny, can you tell me? Okay, Councillor Ryback.
Thank you, Convener. It was just a brief comment about something that Councillor Grant Lang mentioned about the mapping, the importance of the mapping of warm spaces and indeed the importance of warm spaces themselves. And I'd just like very parochially to pay particular commendation to the Letham Community Club in Marley Road and Letham St Mark's Church in Rannoch Road, who do indeed speak with each other and make sure that I think at least Mondays, Wednesdays and Thursdays are covered in Letham for warm spaces. And I think it's important we recognise the good work of these community groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on my list is Councillor Barrett, then followed by Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. I had to signal my intention to speak on the basis that the amendment was standing, but as it's been withdrawn, then it's no longer necessary to comment on the slickness of the SNP's group's operations here today, and neither need to mention the impact that it would have had on Councillor Waters' ward in terms of the investment on Lochleven Heritage Trail, £100,000 which would have been lost to that vital project for his ward. It does make me wonder what happens in the SNP group pre-meetings.
Well, we have arrived at an agreed position, and I think 9.11 applies. Councillor McEwen, look, I want to move to Councillor Duff, followed by Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I just wanted to say that we welcome the report and the detailed information on the current state of our revenue budget. As we all know, finance is a complex issue, and we acknowledge the difficulty challenges that we're facing going forward. I look forward to the further discussions around the Grand Fondo, particularly as it will impact in my ward. But I wanted to say that I also visited one of the local warm spaces in Aberfeldy, and it was certainly well attended. And it wasn't just about tea and biscuits. There were help and information being offered to the many elderly people who were attending. Just want to finish by saying I appreciate the work done by Mr Mackenzie, Mr Walker and their team for this report. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. I just wanted to say two things. Firstly, I'm really pleased with the community involvement with the cost of living fund, both within my Perth city centre ward and more widely across Perth and Kinross. And I would just like to thank all communities for putting their shoulder to the wheel and helping the people of Perth and Kinross get through this extremely difficult period that we are facing. But I also wanted to congratulate our finance team and all senior officers for the efforts that they have made to keep this our finances on track as best as they can. We have a situation here where, had it not been for the pay award that has already been agreed, resulting in an additional 1.4 million of council funds being deployed in this area, we would have been more or less at a break-even forecast situation at the moment, and that is incredibly difficult to achieve in the current environment. So my thanks go to everyone for helping to achieve that. And finally, if I may, just in relation to the risks to that position, there are many, but it would seem that two of the main ones are the performance of Tayside contracts and Live Active Leisure, which have been singled out for being at risk of having to be further funded as a result of the pressures that they face. And I'm sure that a detailed commentary on these positions will come to the next meeting of this committee on the 1st of February.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Now Councillor Leishman, to be followed by Provost McDade.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to Scott Walker and the wider finance team for the comprehensive report. As a substitute today for Bailey Bailey, it has been both enlightening and fascinating to delve into papers I normally wouldn't analyse. And as I previously mentioned, in Perth and Kinross, we have 24,000 people classed as being in low-income employment, and we also have 5,155 children living in poverty across our region. Perth and Kinross is the same as many other areas of Scotland in that we are seeing our communities ravaged by inequalities and a lack of social justice in its purest definition in terms of wealth, health, income, privileges and opportunity. And as budget preparations start and we go away and put our plans together in our different political groups, it's crucial that the administration ensures the final budget in February sets our council up to deliver on its priorities and allow our staff the chance to make the differences our residents need in all areas, including learning, where we battle the rich versus poor education attainment gap and a cost of living crisis that sees our people think twice about heating their home. We have been extensively briefed that our council faces enormous financial pressures. We need to continue using what resources we do have as wisely and efficiently as possible, and credit to our council staff for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Now Provost McDade, and the last person I see for comment on this paper is Councillor Stewart. Provost McDade.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you very much to the team for the report today. It's a pretty sobering report, as are many of the ones we're seeing at the moment, and I think thanks to those in our communities as well who are supporting the less fortunate in our communities at the moment with things like the warm spaces. Similar to Councillor Duff, I look forward to further engagement on the Grand Fondue, we have great experience in our ward of similar things, and whilst there can be benefits, I am concerned about the potential economic displacement this may cause for a bank holiday weekend in August, and there are significant numbers of other events going on. So as I say, I look forward to further engagement on this and some more information on the detailed planning that's going on behind it. But welcome, as Councillor Lang said in his seconding speech, the fact that money is being appropriately put aside at the moment for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Provost McDade. And final person to comment, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. Thanks to the Head of Finance and the Chief Accountant for bringing forward this report and keeping us updated, and to all the staff in the Council working to keep to budget. And obviously we've had significant pressures arise within the last year, since, or at least since the budget was set back in February, March time. I would like to thank Councillor McHugh and Councillor Waters for withdrawing the amendment. I have some sympathy with the idea that we shouldn't continually be putting money into an increasing number of earmarked reserves, but I think the way to deal with that is to actually spend the money on the priorities of elected members when we have represented and got. I know the extent and the efforts that a lot of elected members went to get these items into the budget in the first place, and the answer really is to actually make sure that that money, hopefully officers will reflect on this as we move into the final third of the year, and if there's any opportunity to actually progress any of these projects. They're projects about road safety, they're projects about, some of them are about education, digital inclusion, and a lot of them are about supporting our economy with direct investment into benefit rather than, for example, the assumed associated economic benefit as might derive from the grand fondue. So hopefully officers will be able to reflect and actually progress some of these projects within the final third of the year before the end of the budget. But they are elected member priorities, and we represent they were put in because we were representing the best interests of our constituents. And I think it's important that these additional projects are carried forward, and therefore I'm supportive of the position to put them in the earmarked reserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. And I think also it gives certainty for going forward. And I think that's important, that we don't just say, yeah, we're going to bring a halt to quite a number of projects, many of which are underway. Right, we've moved and seconded the report. Can we all now agree the report? Right. The next report will be Stuart Mackenzie. It's the Composite Capital Budget for 22 to 28 and Housing Investment Programme. That is for 5 years up until 2027. The monitoring report. Can I ask Stuart Mackenzie to speak to the report? Stuart.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. And I trust everyone can hear me online. Thank you. This report provides an update on progress with the Council's approved capital budget and housing investment programme based upon expenditure to the end of September. The last expenditure in the General Fund programme over 6 years to 2027-28 is currently estimated at approximately £687.9 million. This is an increase of £4.8 million over the position approved by the committee in September. In total, the Council has been notified of almost £80 million of additional Scottish Government capital grant funding since the last report. Of this sum, £4.7 million is available to support existing or additional expenditure on the capital programme in respect of the expansion of free school meals, play park renewals and the Recycling Improvement Fund. A further £2.3 million has been provided as a contribution towards the cost of pay awards in the current year. This funding does not support additional capital expenditure, but reduces the Council's borrowing, which in turn allows for adjustments reflected in the Revenue Monitoring Report to help fund pay. Section 4 and Appendices 1 and 2 to the report detail progress of the General Fund programme to date, together with recommended adjustments to the budget. Included within the report is a proposed £1 million increase in the budget for the contribution towards the Harvest Academy extension from £4.2 million to £5.2 million to be funded from the borrowing capacity within the capital funding strategy. It is anticipated that financial close on this project will be reached in December. As noted, work is ongoing on finalising the full business cases for the Perth High School replacement and the Blairgowrie Recreation Centre projects, which will be brought back to Council. There are also proposed adjustments to the budgets for the Common Flood Protection Scheme to reflect progress to date, the Letham Community Wellbeing Hub to reflect the move in the completion date to 2023, and the acceleration of expenditure on the now renamed Perth Museum project. Section 5 and Appendix 3 of the report details progress with the Housing Investment Programme, with budget adjustments reflecting the acceleration of expenditure on the bathroom modernisation and the external fabric programmes, and on fire precaution measures. The Council agreed in September that there would be more regular update reports on the Council's significant capital projects. Appendix 4 provides the first of these reports in respect of updates on the Costia Link Road and Perth Museum projects. I can turn to Section 7 of the report. Section 7 provides my current assessment as a Council Section 95 officer of the overall affordability of the Council's General Fund capital programme. The Council approved the capital funding strategy in February, which created £190 million of investment capacity, based on increasing the budget for borrowing costs by £450,000 each year, together with a managed use of the capital fund over an extended period. Council committed approximately £119 million of £190 million available in February to new and existing projects. And this committee approved a further £33.2 million of additional funding for existing projects in September. What I'm about to say will come as no surprise to elected members. But the impact of current inflation on the Council's capital budget is profound. Between October 2021 and the committee in September, the Council has approved £188 million of additional capital expenditure. Approximately £77 million of this figure are uplifts on the budgets for existing projects. This money is not buying anything new or additional. It is simply meeting the cost of inflation. Based on experience to date and the best information available at this time, the capital programme, as approved, is no longer affordable in its entirety under the current funding strategy due to the impact of contract inflation alone. As the Council finances most of its capital expenditure through borrowing from the Public Works Loans Board, another important consideration is the anticipated increase in PWLB borrowing rates over the short to medium term. Recent increases in the cost of UK government borrowing are reflected in the rates available to local authorities. While PWLB rates are expected to fall over time, to deliver the capital programme, the Council will have to significantly increase its borrowing during a period when rates are likely to be most volatile and higher than previously experienced. To support elected members make informed, risk-based decisions in their consideration of the capital budget, officers are undertaking an assessment of the capital programme against the Council's corporate plan priorities and in the context of overall affordability. This will be subject to discussion with elected member budget review groups as part of their consideration of the capital budget. Subject to approval of the adjustments set out within the report, projected outgoing expenditure on the General Fund programme at the end of 2022-23 is currently estimated at £144.9 million, or 105% of your budget approved in April, and the projected outturn position of the Housing Investment Programme is estimated at approximately £19 million, or 106% of the budget approved in April. Colleagues and I are happy to take questions. Convener.
Thank you, Stuart. At the moment, I don't see any questions. Are there any? Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. My chat function seemed to just drop out there for a second. My question's in relation to 3.4, the final bullet point there in relation to the support given to local government pay awards of £3.254 million from the, as I understand it, a payment towards our general capital grant, which frees up money for us to pay the teachers, or sorry, the pay claim. It goes on to say this funding does not reduce the council's borrowing requirement in the current year. How does this work in terms of the recurring nature of the pay award? Is this a recurring amount of money that will feature in our revenue costs for capital money? Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for your question, Councillor Duff. I'm happy to pick that up. So, essentially what's happening is rather than receive revenue funding, there's constraints in everybody's budget. As you can imagine, the Scottish Government are using capital grant in the current year and next financial year to support the recurring cost of pay awards for 22-23. That's no provision for 23-24, but for 22-23, recurring funding in the current year and next year in the form of capital grant. Thereafter, there is a commitment to continue that funding through revenue grant. So what we need to do is use that capital grant to reduce our borrowing, which reduces our revenue costs, which, as you say, allows us to free up money in the revenue budget and make a contribution towards pay costs.
Thank you.
Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Convener. 3.4 tells us we've received, or we will receive, £1.584 million from the Scottish Government for play park renewals. Do you know if that is the total amount of money we can expect over the 3 years, or is that just the starter?
In fact, I was trying to contact Green Space yesterday, but could I ask Barbara Renton to give a response on Play Park funding?
Thank you, Convener. We're expecting a total of 1.7 approximately £1 million in relation to 5 years, so that we've already received 140,000 for 21-22. We're currently working through a budget of 144,000 for this financial year. 2004-5, it's 291,000. 2005-6, 437,000, and 2006-7, we're anticipating 728,000.
Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara, for that. Just a quick follow-up. Is that being used to entirely and only renew play parks, or are we using that money to fix broken swings and do sort of general maintenance and refurbishment as well?
I think back to Barbara on this.
The funding was specifically about, sort of a manifest of commitment to renew play parks across Scotland. I don't know the operational detail of that, Councillor Forbes, about how we are actually using it, but we can come back to you on that.
Yeah, I'd find also, I'd like to get just a bit more information on that. And I wasn't able to contact Green Space yesterday. Can I move on to... Oh, right. I had Andy. No, I actually would like to hear from Andy Clegg. Yeah.
Thank you, Convener. Andy. Yes, as Barbara said, the money that we got from the Scottish Government is very much focused on refurbishing existing play areas rather than purely maintenance. So what we're doing is looking at comprehensive refurbishment or replacement of larger items of equipment with more up-to-date items as part of that programme, and I think we'd sort of set out a list of play areas which are our priority over the next 5 years, well 4 years for this programme. So we'll be concentrating on those areas and trying to do a full upgrade on all of them.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, can I now move on to Councillor Cuthbert, followed by Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, my question relates to 3.3. It's this £501,000. I'm just wondering what the source of that was. Is that sale of property, increase in rents, or what exactly it is? If someone could give me some detail.
I'll go to Stuart first of all.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor Cuthbert. I don't have a detail to hand, but I wonder if colleagues from communities perhaps have a little bit of background on that.
Barbara.
It amounts to two specific sites. The first is the site 5 at Kinross, with an increased receipt of just under £160,000, which brings in just over £500,000 of receipt for that particular area at Kinross West. The second one is a new receipt of just under £350,000 in relation to a site at Strathtay Road in Perth.
Thank you. Okay, now going to move on to Councillor McEwen. I think you have more than one question. I'm only going to take one question just now and then move on to questions from, I'm just trying to get this in order, Councillor Barrett, followed by Councillor Stewart. Okay, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Convener. The number of questions I have will depend on the answer I get to this first one, because if they answer all my points, I won't need to answer any more questions. With regard to Blairgowrie Recreation Centre, probably the single thing that I've talked about most since I've been a councillor, and any other item, it's a thing I've written about most in different local publications and everything else, and commented in this committee before. Why are where we are with Blair Rec Centre, and what other options have been explored to solve the issue of just building the damn thing?
I'm going to go to Stuart on this.
I think that's what might be described as a leading question, Convener, but my colleague Greg Bolland is primed to provide you an answer, Councillor McEwen. We had anticipated the question, I think.
Thank you, Stuart.
Councillor McEwen, yes, we're very close now to reaching financial close on the project. The plan is to bring the full business case and the committee report to council, just to obviously as part of the kind of new process for governance. So the plan is there that will come to council as soon as possible. That is possible. It will come on the 21st of December. I have a key meeting on, and I should have key information on the 9th of December, which will obviously decide if that's possible on 21st of December, but that's the plan, and we will be looking to sign financial close, subject to council decision, at the start of February's latest programme date, and we'd be looking to be in sight just after that.
I notice that the Chief Executive has indicated a wish to speak. Can I ask Thomas Glenn?
Thank you, Convener. I wanted just to respond because I think the question that Councillor McEwen raises is an important question for Council, not specifically in relation to Blairgowrie Rec, but in relation to the affordability of the overall programme. The comment that struck me in the briefing that I received before today's meeting and that Mr Mackenzie has made earlier on was that we have just agreed £77 million of additional costs for nothing. £77 million, and we get no additionality, no added value. Right now our overall programme is not affordable. So Council does have a question that it needs to consider, not at this point in time, but over the coming months when it looks at its capital programme, about whether or not it continue with all of the key areas of investment, including the suggested investment in two key projects at Blairgowrie, Perth High School, Perth PH2O moving forward. Because the levels of significant investment that we have in existing approved projects before we introduce anything else cannot be afforded based on our current financial model. So I think there is a fundamental question that has to be considered by Council in terms of the affordability of some of its flagship projects and the wider programmes of investment that we have right across Perth and Kinross.
Thank you, Thomas. Councillor McEwen, your question was specifically on Blairgowrie Rec. Do you have anything further?
If I have other questions, I'll put it in there.
Thanks, Convener. The Chief Executive has kind of answered most of the question that I was going to raise, but I do think that as part of the budget review process, we need to have a council tax strategy that may facilitate more of the capital programme than we can currently afford, and certainly my budget review will be looking to consider that. I wanted to ask a question with regard to paragraph 4.3.10, and that was the statement that the budget for £1 million for the technology and innovation incubator units were removed. This was a prudential borrowing a project, and I just wanted to ask, is it no longer a prudential investment, and is it not consistent with attracting high value, high wage, high tech jobs and innovation and young professionals to Perth and Kinross, and why are we shelving it?
Stuart, in the first instance.
Thank you, Convener. I think we have colleagues from communities who can address that question directly. Councillor Barrett.
Barbara.
Thank you, Convener. My understanding that this is in relation to it was an add-on to another project, which was the Aviation Academy, which is being developed by Perth and Kinross UHI. The idea was that we would create additional space within the college building to be used to support business innovation within the rental income. But the college project has changed, which my understanding is that makes our suggestion no longer viable. But I'm happy to get a more detailed briefing note on that.
So Barrett, fine. Okay, now move on to Councillor Shears and the Councillor Stewart, followed by Councillor Shears, and then Councillor Lane, and then I'm going to take second questions from Councillors Duff, Forbes and McKeon. Okay.
Thank you, convener. I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Mackenzie's warning in section 7 and the answer that the Chief Executive gave to Councillor McEwen in particular. Given what was said, why would we decouple consideration of consideration of the significant capital projects that you're proposing to bring to the December Council meeting from the actual capital budget process just a couple of months later?
Stuart.
Thank you, convener, and I take your point, Councillor Stewart. We've had a number of questions on these projects over a period of time. We are at the closing stages of negotiations around these projects, and obviously one of the factors that we're trying to take cognizance of is the potential for further cost increases through delay. So there's a balancing act between committing to projects and not committing to projects at a point in time. So I think that I've also got some further information or a point of clarification from my colleague Lisa Simpson, so I'll let Lisa come in before I continue.
I think the reference to papers coming in December were in relation to the full business case in terms of our approved approach to capital investment that was agreed through the investment blueprint last year. That full business cases would be coming to Council or the relevant committee depending upon the value of those and the profile of those for sign-off. So if papers are coming, it will be for sign-off. Obviously, our duties as officers is to give you our best professional and technical advice. It may well be that our advice might be, although agreeing the proposals in principle, that we pause and consider this as part of the wider programme, but ultimately that will be a democratic decision for Council to take. But it's distinguished, we're not coming in December with, we're coming with the full business cases as part of the approved governance process, and what happens to these at that particular point in terms of timing will be a matter for Council to determine.
That's a Stuart. Supplementary.
I think the Chief Exec had an answer in there.
Thomas Glenn, are you? Thomas?
Thank you, convener. I think much of what I was about to say has been covered by both Stuart and Lisa. Clearly, as officers, we're mandated to bring forward the decisions that Council has previously made, and that's why, as Lisa's indicated, we'll bring that forward when we can in December. I think the principle of what Councillor Stewart described in terms of considering all of these matters at a point, and that point would be at the budget process in February, is a sensible point and one that in principle we would support. But clearly as officers we're looking to deliver on what Council has mandated us to do and bring forward the final business cases as early as we can. But yes, the principle of making decisions on capital investment and on your major asset projects, I would support that principle in terms of that being made in February or 1st of March, I think is the day is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. And now move Councillor Lane.
Thanks. It was just a question for Stuart. I was at a meeting of the Scottish Cities Alliance last week, and I'd never heard of the Infrastructure Bank before, and I don't think we've put in a bid for them, but I believe their interest rate is 20 basis points less than the PWLB borrowing rate. I was just wondering if that would be worth taking a look at, because I know that the projects that they will support and bid are similar to what we want to do with climate change and sustainability being one of their investment portfolios. So I was just wondering if you had a look at that, Stuart.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lane. And yes, we actually just been discussing that last week and having a look at prospectus from the investment, so the Infrastructure Investment Bank. And you're correct that they are currently offering rates below PWLB rates and also long-term rates as well, over 50 years. They do have some restrictions on what they are prepared to fund, but we we need to have a closer look at what the options are around that. That's a fair point.
Okay, now to someone who hasn't asked the question yet in this section, Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. And this question is specifically for Mr Mackenzie. And sorry, it's just occurred to me as a consequence of what we've been discussing today. In the commentary under increased borrowing costs at 7.5 and 7.6, you make the comments about what has happened since the fiscal statement to UK Parliament on the 23rd of September and the impact that that had on PWLB rates, which increased markedly. Conversely, in the previous section on ongoing impact of inflation, your commentary there, understandably, is in relation to the impact of inflation up until September, i.e. the time of the previous Chancellor Kwarteng's misguided statement. And there we were talking about £77.4 million worth of inflationary uplifts. Are you able to give any form of update or any kind of steer on what has happened to that figure since and what we can anticipate for the in terms of inflation impact going forward?
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Drysdale, for your question. In terms of the specifics around the key council projects, we haven't, obviously, for commercial confidentiality, included those figures because we are closing these negotiations off, and it's not much of a negotiation if you explain to your partner what you're prepared to pay. So we have taken advice on that, around that, but we are continuing to see an inflation impact on the delivery, not only of our capital projects, but our programmes and just about everything else. You know, the same pressures which are societal at the moment, both for your constituents, both for local businesses, both for governments, apply to ourselves. So there's no sense of that easing. In terms of the PWLB position, the rates have come down, but they're significantly higher. And we'll touch on that, and you can see it graphically in the Treasury report in terms of the graphs. Now, I'll take for you a little bit more of a detail there. But in terms of just general inflation and the impact of inflation, there's nothing at the moment which is suggesting that that's not continuing. And the experience across Scottish local government is exactly the same.
Thank you. Okay, on further questions, and I understand the second questions from Councillors Duff and Forbes have been answered already. So I want to conclude on questions with, first of all, second question from Councillor McEwen, and then a second question from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Convener. I think, hearing that there's a paper coming to council, I'll leave the vast majority, but I've got to actually, I'll discuss with Mr Boland offline. But the one question I think that comes with much more of a financial background is that the Blair Rec Centre and Perth High School are both to be built to passive house design. And I know earlier in the week, myself and Councillor Waters had a discussion about passive house and the quality of the building and how long these buildings last. And their longevity and quality means that they're a valuable asset longer than normal builds. Would that not then allow us to borrow money over a longer period of time because that asset will be of that quality longer?
Although I'm going to go to Stuart on this because this is really about the question about, although my understanding is that the vast bulk of our debt is between 30 and up to 50 years. But Stuart?
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor McKeon, for your question. In terms of asset lives and the accounting for asset lives, myself and my team take professional advice from our property colleagues using any relevant index. At the moment, the longest period we use for asset lives matches the period over which we're borrowing from PWLB, which is 50 years. So for Perth High School, we're assuming an asset life of 50 years, and that's common across our infrastructure assets. But I take your point, we would seek advice on that.
Stephen Crawford, also Head of Property, wants to comment. Stephen?
Sorry. Thank you. Just to answer.
Yeah, you're muted, Stephen.
Stephen, muted yourself there.
Sorry. We've taken to support Stuart's answer. We've taken the approach on the wet leisure facility at Blair Rec to put the borrowing costs over 40 years as opposed to 30 years. Because previously we ran wet leisure borrowing over 30.
Councillor McKeown? Yeah.
I was currently of the understanding that our borrowing would be the 30 and that hadn't moved to the 40 yet, so that's extra information, so thank you.
I'm sure there's going to be more on this in due course. Councillor Barrett, last question.
Thanks, Convener. Paragraph 4.2.2 refers to the £1 million increase in costs of our share of the Harris Academy extension. I just wanted to ask what assurance can we get that all efforts are being made to manage or minimise the increase in these costs in terms of value re-engineering, and is there full transparency on the costs available to the council?
On Harris, maybe Stuart wants to come in on that, and I think we're going to get further on this for the next council meeting. But Sheena Devlin as well. Sheena? Sure.
Convener Greg Boland
indicated
that he'll answer that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thanks, Convener. Just to give the committee assurance, we have a joint project board with Dundee City Council. All information is scrutinised by Head of Property and Stephen Crawford. So we're receiving all the costs and all the information. So we're quality assuring it, making sure we're comfortable, and we're at the point of subject to agreement today, signing the contract with Dundee City Council for the extension to proceed.
Thank you, Greg. Councillor Barrett.
And just regarding, value re-engineering and all options being explored, Greg.
Yes, we're doing that as standard practice, Councillor Barrett. Yes.
Okay. There being no further questions, I'm going to move the capital budget report and the housing investment programme to 27. Stuart Mackenzie as Head of Finance, I think, has already given you quite detailed commentary on the contents of the capital monitoring report. I just want to make one or two additional remarks. I certainly welcome over 4.7 million of additional funding from the Scottish Government to support the expansion of the free school meal programme. In terms of play park renewals, which we've discussed already, and on recycling. I also welcome that we expect to achieve financial close on Harris Academy, we just talked about just a couple of minutes ago, very soon indeed, and that we will expect to see full business cases on Perth High School and on Blairgowrie Rec in due course. And I do hear the comments of the Chief Executive. Without any doubt, I think we've got to recognise, and it's a point raised by Councillor Drysdale, our capital budget is experiencing quite considerable inflationary pressures. And I think Section 7 gives us a stark reminder of the challenges we face now as a council in delivering our capital budget. Whilst we do remain committed to the delivery of the approved capital budget, it's inevitable that we're going to face tough choices in the coming months between now and the 1st of March. You can't get away from that fact. What we cannot lose sight, though, of is the scale of our ambition for the capital programme. Ambition that will see some 683 million invested in schools, in our roads, in our bridges, with our bridges, in our buildings and other infrastructure costs across the whole of Perth and Kinross. Investment that will be welcomed by citizens, by businesses and visitors alike. The report also sets out, and we didn't really discuss this too much, but some 84 million of expenditure on the housing investment programme over the next 5 years. Last of all, I'd like to thank officers for all they've done across the council, in particular our finance team, and I'm sure there's going to be many discussions over the next few weeks as we enter into the detail of the budgetary process. I'd like to move the paper. Councillor Lane to second.
Thanks, convener. I think we've got some really hard decisions to make over the capital budget projects in the next few months. Blair Gowrie Recreation Centre has been promised to the people of East Perthshire for many years, and that will have to will certainly be part of my forming my view. We've promised and promised, and for various reasons it will not go into now. We've never got to an end point and fully committed to that. So that's the only comment I'll make in the paper. I'm happy to second it.
Okay, do we have any comment? Councillor Rebeck.
Thank you, convener. And I make these comments notwithstanding what our council leader Grant Laings said about difficult choices, and indeed our chief executive, who also made the point about the capital programme being tight. However, I do, and I'm going to be parochial here in terms of service this time and not geography. I do think it's important to recognise the work that Greg Boland and his team have been doing, which has been outstanding. I also believe that we do need to get on with Blair Gowrie Rec. It's been hanging around for a long time, and I'm very supportive of getting that over the line as soon as we can. And I also think it's worth noting the good work that's been done on the Harris Academy extension, which does feel to me like a very sensible solution. I don't think we want to be explaining to parents in Invergowrie why we're busing their kids all the way up to the high school when there was another option available. So well done, Greg and his team. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is for comment is Councillor Forbes, followed by Councillor Shars.
Thanks, convener. I'm delighted that Councillor Rebeck has said pretty much what I was going to say about Invergowrie. I'm pleased to see this progress, and I certainly couldn't look the parents of Invergowrie children in the eye and tell them it wasn't going ahead. So thankfully, I'm not going to have to do that. I want to return to the question I asked earlier on about play parks, and I know you were probably expecting me to bring this up, hence the reason you've been trying to get hold of Andy Clegg. But let's not forget the Scottish Government did make a manifesto commitment to renew every play park in Scotland. Perth and Kinross has 149 play parks. Average cost last time I looked to renew it was £80,000 per play park. That will no doubt be higher. That's £12 million. If I understood what Barbara Renton said earlier, we're expecting 1.7 over the 5 years. That's 10.5, 10.3, I guess, short. And the Scottish Government have made a lot of manifesto commitments, things like the GRA, the private change to the private rental sector, many others. When it comes to this, it's abundantly clear to me, and I'm sure it is to you, convener, that they will not meet this obligation that they've set themselves. I can assure you, convener, and I think you'll agree with me, that I get more complaints about play parks than I do about any of the other things I've just mentioned that the Scottish Government have committed to. So I would finish by urging you, convener, to put as much pressure as you possibly can onto your colleagues at Holyrood to make sure that they meet this manifesto commitment with the same enthusiasm that they want to meet their others.
Councillor Shars, followed by Provost McDade, and then Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. Much of what I was going to say has already been said by others also, but just to reassure the Leader of the Council that we will do everything we can to support you to get Blairgowrie Rec built, but also for the pupils present and future for Perth High School. You know, it's really important that that project is delivered, and I would echo Councillor Ribbeck's comments about the work that Greg Boland and his team have been doing to deliver those buildings. So thank you.
Thank you. Provost McDade.
Thank you, Convener. You know, there's some sobering conclusions out of this, obviously, in terms of, you know, the capital programme isn't affordable in its current format, and we are going to have to make some difficult decisions. I think, given the long-term commitment to Blairgowrie, we will need to, you know, ensure that we keep that commitment to them and the people of Eastern Perthshire, as Leader of the Council says. But I do think we need to seriously look at our capital programme in the broadest way possible and look at how we might do things differently and how we might make it affordable, because otherwise we are leaving our children with an incredible amount of debt that they will have to repay through cuts to services for decades and decades to come, and that is something that we shouldn't be doing if we're a responsible council. So I do think we are going to have to make some difficult decisions that might not always be, you know, our preferred choice, but that's we knew that was going to be the situation when we were re-elected, and I do think we need to seriously look at how we're going to proceed with the capital programme in the broadest sense.
Thank you, Provost. And from what I can see, final comment is from Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I just wanted to come back on the comments that Councillor Forbes has made, as he has done previously, on the issue of play parks. Yes, that is an SNP manifesto commitment, one of many manifesto commitments which are made more difficult by the actions of the UK government. And just as I'm sure the SNP Scottish Government will do its very best to honour all of its manifesto commitments, this SNP administration in Perth and Kinross Council will do likewise, and we will apply our sadly very limited resources now to the corporate plan priorities, which are hopefully going to be approved at the December meeting of Council. And you can be assured that we will do everything we can to deliver on our manifesto commitments also. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further comments, I'm going to move the report. Just make one comment, and that is nobody made reference to, and we agreed at the last meeting of this committee to provide updates on capital projects. And you will see in the appendix the first of these on, and I must call it going forward, Perth Museum rather than City Hall, but both on Perth Museum and on the Cross Tailink Road. And that is something I think is important that we continue to be on top of going forward, especially given the constraints that we face in terms of our capital programme. Fellow councillors, I'd like to move the report and note the report. Are we good? Okay, we move on to, we're not too bad on time. We move to the next report, and that's on Treasury activity and compliance. And again, I would ask Stuart Mackenzie to speak to this report. Stuart.
Thank you, Convener. This report advises the Committee of Treasury activity undertaken during the quarter to 30th September 2022. As members will be aware, there were back-to-back increases in the bank base rate in August and September in response to rising inflation. And we've touched on some of that in the earlier report. The bank base rate was increased again in November to 3% as CPI inflation reached a 40-year high of 11.1% in October. As noted in the earlier paper on capital, the Council predominantly finances its capital expenditure through long-term borrowing from Public Works Loans Board. and PWLB rates are influenced by changes in the base rate, but are directly linked to the UK Government's cost of borrowing. As shown in Appendix 1 to the report, PWLB rates rose sharply over late September, and particularly in view of market volatility following the publication of the then Chancellor's fiscal statement and growth plan on the 23rd of September. The Treasury activity during the quarter is summarised in Section 4 and Appendix 2 to the report. There was no new long-term borrowing undertaken during the quarter, with the Council's total long-term debt remaining at £606.3 million as at the end of September. There was a higher level of investment activity during the quarter in September than in the preceding 3 months due to short-term investments maturing and being reinvested or rolling over. Due to the increased value of fixed investments, £84 million in total, at a higher average rate of return, that's the flip side to the PWLB issue, of 3.46%, investments undertaken during the quarter will generate approximately £2.55 million of income on maturity compared to just under £1.1 million in the previous quarter, even though the Council's total level of investments outstanding reduced from £246.8 million to £240.5 million at the end of September. There were no breaches in compliance with Treasury and investment policy, and all prudential indicators remain within the approved limits. Happy to take questions, Convener.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Right. No questions at all? Right. Then I shall move to moving the report. As has been made clear, the report covers the period to 1st July until 30th September. But what we are going to do going forward and have done on this occasion is also provide some commentary on events post the end of September. And I think that's particularly germane given developments, the quite remarkable developments in markets over the last 2 months, continued upward trend in interest rates and the position in terms of inflation. The report does provide commentary on the wider economy, as well as a summary of our own Treasury activity. I think one thing that really did stand out to me is indeed in terms of investment income, and it's a reflection obviously of higher interest rates, but compared to the quarter ended 30th June, when the return on investments was 1.06 million, that rose to 2.55 million over the 3-month period, and I suspect the period to end of December is going to see the position enhanced even further. There are no breaches in compliance with the investment strategy and policies, and also the Council's prudential indicators were adhered to throughout the quarter, as I would expect. I'm happy to move the report. Second.
Thanks, Convener. I think that the fact that there were no questions on that report shows the trust that we have that's built up over many years in our finance team, who do a fantastic job and are well capable, obviously, of knowing exactly what they're doing more than questions we can. So I think they should take the fact that there's no questions on this report, not as lack of interest, because it is very important, but trust in their ability of the whole team. And if Stuart could pass that down to his team, that's my feelings. I'm sure many within this chamber agree with what I'm saying there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Barrett, I think you wish to make a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'd just like to echo the comments of the Leader of the Council with regard to the quality of Treasury management. that this council provides. I do wonder in terms of kind of risk-based reporting, I don't think we've ever had a situation where we've either violated the investment strategy or deviated from the prudential indicators. And, you know, it takes time and it costs money to produce these reports. And do we need to move to a longer reporting cycle, either 6 monthly or something like that, on these sorts of reports in order of interests of efficiency?
Stuart.
Is it, sorry, Councillor Barrett, but I was just what you'll allow me to ask the head of finance, well, Stuart Mackenzie. I was thinking maybe this is a statutory thing that we'll have to do.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just settle for Stuart. The code of practice for potential borrowing requires us to report regularly. Councillor Barrett, I have asked that very question of my colleagues, but they advised me that this is really in best practice. So we'll try and keep this as brief as we can, and we'll look at that again.
Thank you. I mean, so 6 monthly would still be regularly.
I actually do think it does help that we keep it to quarterly, and it's a quarterly update on revenue, on capital, and on the treasury function. And I think we're doing, you know, regular updates now on major capital projects. And I think if you make it 6 months, I think it just makes it too long a time period, too long a time lag, especially with the change in economic circumstances. Do we have any other comments? No? Okay, can we agree the contents of this paper?
Agreed.
Agreed. We move on to the final paper, and that is on procurement. And once again, Stuart Mackenzie is going to speak to the paper. Stuart.
Thank you, Convener. I'll be brief. The Council has a statutory duty both to report retrospectively on its procurement activity in the previous financial year and to set out its planned procurement going forward. The committee is therefore requested to approve for publication the procurement annual report for financial year 2021-22, attached at Appendix 1, and note the record of tenders accepted and payments made under the Council's scheme of delegation. Also included in the procurement annual report is a list of payments made to external organisations last year under the Council's reporting arrangements for following the public pound. The committee is further asked to note the planned procurement activity in future years set out within the Perth and Kinross Council Contract Delivery Plan for 22-23, attached at Appendix 2 to the report. As members will appreciate, this document reflects the position at a point in time and will require to be updated as events progress. The procurement annual report seeks to highlight how the procurement activity supported the delivery of the Council's main corporate plan objectives in 2021-22 and will continue to do so. There's a fair amount of detail within the report. I think that's an understatement. There's a lot of detail within the report. But some of the key statistics are summarised in Appendix A on page 83 of the agenda pack. Procurement is central to the delivery of Council services and includes not only revenue expenditure, but also capital investment in the Council's infrastructure and assets. This activity is also clearly important to the local economy, with 26% of Council spend being recorded as being with local suppliers in 21-22, an increase of 3% on the position in the previous year. And as part of the Council's transformation programme, the strategic review of commissioning and procurement is therefore a key area of focus over the next few years. I'm joined by my colleague Vanessa Robertson from the corporate procurement team, and we're happy to take questions, Convener.
Yes, there is. Councillor Shires, you have 2 questions. I cannot see anyone else that's putting questions. Caroline.
Thank you, Convener. The first question is around the community benefits wish list and how we promote that. Is an excellent scheme, and procurement teams are to be congratulated on the work that they've done, but I feel like there could be more that is done to promote it across communities. And my second question, if I may, and I probably should declare an interest, as I benefited from completing a course to support a local group, which was funded through the upskilling. Do we have an idea of how many volunteers have benefited from the community volunteer upskilling funding, and what the sort of projections are for that for the future? Because again, it's about, if it's helping communities be more resilient and have better trained volunteers, that can only be to the good. Thank you.
I think the best person here is Barbara or Vanessa. Vanessa, are you online?
Yes, I can answer in terms of the community benefits wish list. So the promotion is mainly through social media and through our community planning team. So where we have wishes fulfilled, we will put out social media posts to promote both the wish list and a wee bit of extra promotion for the supplier and the community group. So we do that. We do try to keep a kind of control of the wish list so that it doesn't get so big that very few of the wishes are being delivered. So we try and control it a wee bit in terms of the volume, but we would do a push if we thought that there wasn't very much on it. We would do another push for that. But happy to take any feedback on ways that we could promote it further.
Convener, I don't have the detail of that to hand, but that's something that we can look at.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Get back to you.
Get back to Caroline. Okay. The next question is from Councillor Barrett, followed by Councillor Duff.
Thanks again, Convener. I just wanted to ask regarding page 3 of the report, page 71 of the pack, regarding Tayside Procurement Consortium and the changes that have been made there. It does seem to be a kind of counterintuitive change that we're moving what looked like a kind of collaborative shared service efficiency to something that's being disaggregated with the loss of any data on the value of spend through Tayside Procurement and Consortium. I just wonder if we could find out a bit more as to why these changes have been made.
Sure.
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to take that question. Thank you for the question, Councillor Barrett. Circumstances perhaps might even be the most apt answer to your question. So the council, along with Dundee City and Angus councils, took part in a collaborative project to see if we could further enhance our arrangements. That collaboration unfortunately didn't progress for a number of reasons. As a result of that, there was significant staff turnover, really at a very senior level across all 3 local authorities, and Dundee City have just recently made an appointment. So the Tayside Procurement Consortium effectively unwound in the back of that wider collaborative attempt, and what was agreed, as much for resource efficiency reasons, but also in light of the fact that there simply wasn't anybody left standing at the consortium, was to insource that activity, and we're currently working through how that's actually going to look. But your point is well made, and there have been challenges around managing the collaborative contracts since the unwinding of Tayside Procurement Consortium.
Lisa, do you wish to clarify?
Just thought it might be helpful for elected members to know that we're currently reviewing our review of strategic commissioning and procurement as part of the Council's transformation programme. There's also been a change in where procurement sits. I'm the strategic lead for that project, and procurement is now sitting under legal and governance. And we will be looking at all of these collaborative opportunities as part of that process to ensure that we are getting the maximum value and benefits from our procurement functionality. To be clear, there still are Teesside Procurement Consortium contracts in place, and there is still collaboration and work and a board that engages, an operational board that engages with each other to ensure that these contracts ongoing are managed effectively and compliantly. But that will also give an opportunity to discuss future collaboration and collaborative models with our partners across Teesside, if that's the appropriate and best thing to do. So that will all be looked at in and around the wider strategic review of our commissioning and procurement activity.
Thanks, Lisa. Final question from what I can see is Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. In the report, it talks about, I think, 94% of our invoices being paid on time. I'm just interested to know what our window for paying invoices are, and whether we monitor our contractors and their policy for invoice payment to subcontractors and the like. Thank you.
Think on that to Stuart. I was going to say Vanessa, but Stuart.
Thank you, Convener. 30 days is normal business terms, Councillor Duff. So that's the target we're measuring against. And that's a sort of local authority-wide target the Scottish Government have, I think, suggested other targets perhaps. And we have, during the COVID pandemic, we moved to payment out with those terms, in some cases almost instantly, depending on the circumstances. And we will vary it. That's normal terms of business. If local suppliers in particular are struggling or having difficulty and they approach us and there's grounds for varying payment, we will do so. In terms of encouraging our supply chain to meet those same standards, if not better, then that is part of the discussion when contracts are awarded. And Vanessa wishes to come in.
Vanessa?
Yes, I just wanted to add that the council, we also offer procurement card and e-invoicing payments. So if suppliers wish to, they can adopt those methods. And that means that they are actually paid sooner. So with procurement card, they would take the money from the card and we pay the bank. So we get rebates from that, plus the supplier gets paid faster. And with the e-invoicing, it's up to the supplier. They would submit the invoice, which would go straight into our system and paid from there. So we have automated some of the payments.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. There being no further questions, I'm going to move the report. The purpose of the report is twofold. First, it gives us a look back at procurement activity over the last financial year with the detail as set out in Appendix 1. Secondly, it provides an overview of known procurement activity over the next few years, which is set out in Appendix 2. Following approval today, both documents will be published and ensure that we comply with our reporting and legislative requirements. I think I'd also echo what Lisa Simpson has stated in terms of our transformation programme, that procurement is going to be a considerable, quite an important aspect of that programme going forward. I'd like to move the report and I can ask Councillor Lane to second.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks for the team under Lisa and the procurement team for the work that they do. For me, the most important point is point 2 on page 72 of the pack, the vision for procurement. I think we're changing our aims of how we procure things moving forward, not solely just on cost. And it reads, to achieve commercial excellence in our procurement activities, ensure that we deliver best value services to the communities of Perth and Kinross and do so in an effective, efficient, ethical and sustainable way that delivers local economic, environmental and social benefits. And I think that should be, it's a very, a vision that I would totally support for procurement within Perth and Kinross Council. I'm happy to second the report.
Thank you. Do we have any comment? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I very much welcome the report, and I note from the details that it contains that regarding the statistics for small, medium enterprises, that 82% of our contract spend goes to SMEs and 72% of these in Scotland, and 26% of that spend is in local SMEs. So I'm very pleased to see that, and that's an increase on previous years. I also welcome that information that was given there about invoice payment. I think we all recognise that so many businesses struggle to get their invoices paid, and I'm pleased to see that we are doing everything that we can to make life as easy as possible for our suppliers. Elsewhere in the report, it talks about the community benefits wish list, which I think is a great initiative, and I'm pleased to see that that is working reasonably well, and as Councillor Shire said, I think we could work a wee bit better, maybe promoting that in our own wards to various projects that we're aware of. And also throughout the contract information, there's a lot of information about contracts that have been awarded as part of the Community Investment Fund, and it's great to see that money being distributed to so many projects across Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. There being no further comments, can we agree the contents of and agree the report? Right, and that is our business concluded for today.